My name is Woody, and I like to stand when I'm speaking. I like to move around when I'm speaking. Obviously, I talk very loudly when I'm talking. But all of these things are because I get excited. Some people ask me, Woody, why are you so intense? And I say, I'm not intense. I'm just excited. So I'm excited to be here today and talk to you about some of the research I've done on black men's health. So my name is Woody. Happy to be here. Woody Neighbors, actually. I also am the member of the team with the most gray hair. So I'm speaking to you as someone who has been on the planet now for 71 years. And I want to stay alive. I mean, Newbie mentioned that. That is my goal. I want to stay alive. I know I'm going to get in and get out, try to do my presentation fairly quickly. I do have some slides to help me stay on track. One of the problems I have is I've got so many stories I can tell you, and I have a tendency to go off track. There's a very lovely young lady sitting in the crowd who's smiling right now, and that's my wife, the other Dr. Neighbors. And I always love it when she comes with me to my presentations because when I'm way off track, I look at her and she's giving me, those husband-wife looks. They're like, uh-oh, I'm feeling the vibe. So I'm going to keep my eye on her so I can stay on track. But I do have a few slides. I hope I can whip through those for you. So just to get started with my presentation, you can see on the screen that my name is unimportant. You don't have to remember my name, but what I do want you to remember is just this one word, male. If you don't remember anything else I say today, just remember male, because male stands for men are leaving early. It's just that simple. Now, the other thing I want you to remember is that number 7.5. So male and 7.5. Because 7.5, that's the number of years that black women are going to outlive black men. 7.5. Male, 7.5. So I can stop now and sit down because that's all you really need to know. Because Dr. Newby covered, everything. Next slide, please. So I already told you I'm 71. I've been doing research. I sometimes like to say, they do call me Dr. Neighbors, but I say, yeah, but I never went to med school. And what I mean by that is I have a PhD and I do research. Dr. Newby and Dr. Levy, they have MDs, and they're the ones responsible for taking care of you. But my job is to try to figure out what is going on with black men. So I've been doing research on black men for the last 15 years. I've been doing personal research on one black man for at least the last 31 years. Every morning I get up and look in the mirror and I say, what are you doing? And what I mean by that is, are you going to behave yourself today or are you going to misbehave? And I've got some chronic diseases that are chasing me. Now, I want to stay alive, but I've got hypertension, I got type 2 diabetes, I got chronic kidney disease. They're all trying to do their thing to take me out. So it's my job to push back, to fight back. Somebody mentioned intrinsic motivation a second ago. It is so much about behavior, lifestyle, and really trying to do the right thing. So today I'm coming to you with good news and bad news. So I'm going to give you the bad news first. Next slide. So this is one way to make that number 7.5 come alive. And I'm not going to go through the whole picture, but you can definitely see the row that focuses on us, Black Americans. The male figure and the female figure are not on top of each other. They are spread out. And all that means is women are living longer than we are. Next slide. Here's another way to look at it. This picture shows us that the gap between male life expectancy and female life expectancy has been too wide for too long. So my point to you is that this difference is not only unnecessary, but it's unacceptable. We men can no longer stand for this. We've got to do something to change what we're doing, because we do want to stay alive, and in fact, we want to live as long as we possibly can. Next slide. So we all know men, black men, live sicker, die younger. What are we going to do about it? My point to you is that we need to talk about it. And that's why when Colin came up with this idea, brother, let's talk, I said, sign me up. Because all my research shows that this is one of the most important things that we can do. Next slide. So I've done a lot of research studies, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to talk about the one that was done primarily here in Detroit called Man Up, Man Down. I'll say a little bit about mental health and depression. And by the way, my good friend Dr. Lonnie Joe is sitting back there. And if you really want to know, a lot more about men and depression, I had the good fortune to do an interview with him. He interviewed me, and we talked a lot about depression. And that video is still up on YouTube. So I'm going to hit the highlights of that today. We did the Man Up, Man Down study here in Detroit. We also did some work in Flint on diabetes. And then I'll have a little bit to say about my personal struggles with diabetes, kidney disease, and depression due to grief. Let me say a little bit about where we got the Man Up, Man Down title from. My research program has always been called Man Up, Man Down. And we came to that name because I noticed that when I was together with the black men that I hang out with, first of all, we never talked about any problems we had. In fact, I don't think anybody ever had a problem. It's like Dr. Newby said, how you doing? I'm good, I'm fine, you know. But if anyone mustered up the courage to talk about a challenge they were dealing with, that conversation was very short. You know, you would say, well, you know, I'm dealing with something, and inevitably somebody would say, well, I don't know, you just need to man up. And I kept hearing this man up thing, and then one day it hit me. That's bad advice. That is really bad advice. We need to stop saying that to each other, because what you're really saying is, I don't think I can help you. You need to go somewhere, man up, and handle your business. And that is the wrong advice. So what we started saying is, you can man up some of the time, but you can't man up all the time to every challenge life is going to throw your way. Sometimes the manning up results in a man going down. And our Man Up, Man Down study was a study of depression among black men. And so, you know, sometimes we say, hey, I'm feeling down. That means I'm feeling depressed. So that's where Man Up, Man Down comes from. But guess what? What we also learned by doing this research is that if men get together and talk to each other, imagine that, if we actually talk to each other about what's really going on with us, and like Dr. Newby said, tell the truth. We say, take off the mask. Just take off the mask. You can be the man up again. You can go down. You can be man down, but you can be man up again if you are smart enough and brave enough to reach out to somebody for help and assistance. So that's my message. That's my message today. Brothers, we need to talk to each other. We need to tell the truth. Take off the mask. Next slide. So the Man Up, Man Down study, you can see it was a study primarily in Detroit, but we went to other cities as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we learned from doing a whole bunch of focus groups. And all we mean by focus group is that we would just get in a room with about 6, 7, 8 men, and we would talk to each other about whatever was going on, including our mental health. Next slide. So when we asked all the black men that we were talking to, what is a real man? This doesn't surprise you at all, right? I mean, this is the kind of information we got. A real man works hard, he's tough, he won't back down, he doesn't complain, he handles his business, he needs no help. That's not a real man. He mans up to every challenge. And so I thought, wow, this reminds me of the story of John Henry, the steel driving man. We all know about John Henry, and I will confess, for the vast majority of my life, John Henry was my hero. Until I thought about the story, and while John Henry won that contest with the steam drill, he went over, lay down beneath a tree, and he died at that moment. John Henry, male, he left way too early. Now, I'm not against hard work. I work hard every day of my life, but we can work too hard. And one of the points I want to leave you with is that if we're spending too much time working and ignoring our health, then we're going to leave early. We can't afford to do that. Next slide. So in the Man Up, Man Down study, after we heard all about what a real man does, we started asking them about emotions, feelings, and eventually depression. And we were kind of surprised that the number one symptom that the black men we talked to wanted to hear about was loneliness. And at first we were just shocked by that. Man, that's paradoxical, because they just got through telling us, hey, I don't need anybody. I do my thing. I man up. I step up. I'm a rock. And then turn around and like, yeah, but, loneliness. And so anyway, long story short, what we discovered is that once we men get comfortable and really starting, to let down, there are all kinds of things that we will talk about. We just need to find that comfortable space. We will even talk about mental health, which, as you know, in the black community has always traditionally carried a huge amount of stigma. But here we were now in a room with a group of black men, and they wanted to know about loneliness. And so we talked a lot about that. And basically the point of this slide is that one of the problems we black men have is that we work ourselves into a corner of social isolation precisely at those times when we need the help of others the most. And I'm raising my hand. I'm guilty, guilty, guilty. I could see myself in the data I was collecting, because when I'm really troubled, again, don't take my word for it. You can ask my wife. She knows when I'm going through some stuff, because I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to talk to anybody. I can be in a room full of people, but I'm still alone. I mean, I'm just in that man cave, I guess. And I had to learn over the years not to do that. And that's basically what our research shows. We just need to stop isolating ourselves precisely when we need help the most. Next slide. But again, don't take my word for it. I'm just this person standing up here talking. But the Surgeon General has recognized this. He's actually calling it an epidemic. And in fact, he's saying this is a problem for men of all races and ethnicities. But it's definitely, my work shows it's definitely a problem for us. So, just let's stamp out loneliness by communicating with each other about what's really going on. Next slide. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through the next few slides. I just wanted to give you a little flavor of what we learned from our Man Up, Man Down study, which we did here in Detroit. I told you that I was going to give you some good news, so I'm finished with the bad news. Here's one of the best pieces of news we got from our study, is that as the guys opened up more and more, they said, hey, actually, we were wrong. A real man can get help. Being a real man doesn't keep you from getting help because you're honest with yourself. And that's when we started saying, yeah, we just really have to tell the truth. Next slide. So as we continue to talk to the men, basically they came up with the idea of we need to do this. We need to get together and talk to each other. We were doing a research study. So at the end of our focus group, they would say, oh, this was great. I feel so much better about everything. When's our next meeting? And we'd have to say, there is no next meeting. This is a research study, and we just wanted you to come here today, help us collect some data, and then we'll try to figure it out. But every group we ran in Detroit, at the end of it, they said, when's the next meeting? Next slide. So we said, we need to have more meetings. I mean, doesn't take a rocket science to figure that out. So we turned our focus group meetings into what we called the man-to-man, no-nonsense health dialogues, and I'm very happy one of my colleagues is here today, Jimani Lee, helped me with this work. Jimani and I went everywhere in Detroit. And in fact, Jimani's in one of these pictures. I don't know if you can see him, but these are just some pictures I like to look at because it shows, some of the meetings we had when we started putting together the man-to-man, no-nonsense health dialogues. And we did that at University of Michigan, Detroit Center, UD Mercy. So we were all over the place. Ford Field, we would go there. Next slide. And so what we did, we took this idea of no-nonsense, man-to-man dialogues, and we incorporated it into our next research project. Now this project happened to be done at Flint, and we called it Man Up to Diabetes. And so here's just a picture of some of the research staff. But the bottom line is that we recruited 50 black men, 55 and over, to our Man Up to Diabetes study. And over the course of 6 months, we significantly lowered their blood sugar on average. The blood sugar went down. And all we did was get the men together once a week for 8 weeks to talk about how we're going to deal with diabetes. Now, I have diabetes. I've had type 2 for as long as I can remember. I think I was in my 40s. My mother had diabetes. My aunt had diabetes. And then later on I learned that my dad had diabetes. So some of you might say, oh, well, you got diabetes because you're genetically predisposed. And I would say, not exactly, because I was doing some things in terms of my lifestyle that were facilitating me having high blood sugar. So I'm here to promote good behavior, healthy behavior, not blaming everything else on family history. So, see you later. We can lower blood sugar. We can lower blood pressure. And in my case, I can actually improve upon my kidney biomarkers, something called EGFR. I'm not going to talk about that now, but be happy to answer any questions you have once I'm finished talking. So next slide, please. So the good news, if you're feeling well, you got to listen very carefully to what Colin Mays is going to tell you next. If you have a diagnosis and you have been told you're dealing with some diseases like I am, then you better follow your doctor's orders. Listen to what Dr. Newby is saying, listen to what Dr. Levy is saying, and do that. Do those things. But guess what? Dr. Newby and Dr. Levy are not going to be able to move in with you and spend every day. I mean, this is basically what John is saying. You know, we got a whole bunch of days we're on our own. And that's why I look in the mirror every morning and say, Woody, are you going to do the right thing? Are you going to stay away from those nachos? Are you going to stay away from those salty snacks? You know, the Doritos and all this? Are you going to leave that stuff alone? Or are you going to let your automobile take you through McDonald's and act like you've got a self-driving car and cause you to order some French fries? Are you going to do that, or are you not going to do that? So at the end of the day, we have to make the right decisions so that when we do go see the doctor, and the doctor is showing us our biomarkers, those biomarkers hopefully are going to get better and better because we're behaving ourselves. If you're feeling ill, and by that I mean, you know, you're just not feeling quite yourself, things are not right, maybe you have some symptoms, all I'm saying to you is tell somebody. Don't keep it to yourself. Just talk to one person. When they do ask you how you're doing, don't just automatically say, oh, everything's good. If it's not, have that conversation. Next slide. So let me close by saying, don't remember my name. Don't remember anything I've said except male, because men are leaving early. That's unacceptable, and it's totally unnecessary. And so I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you very much.